Alhamdulillah, Shukran la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Praise be to God. I bear witness that there is no God but God and He has no partners. So inshallah, in this khutbah, we will be checking verses that speak about divine will, God's will. There is a video about Rashad where he speaks about how God is doing everything, that God is in control of everything, that we essentially don't do anything. It is actually God who is doing everything. And so this khutbah will basically be a revisiting of that concept, of that Quranic concept, and how it is very much tied to our submission. We can only claim to be true submitters to God alone when we fully understand this concept of God is doing everything. If we don't believe that God is doing everything, that means we are not submitters. We have not truly understood the message of submission. There are many verses in the Quran that speaks about God's will. Everything is in accordance with God's will. So we have to accept that, be aware of that, and submit to that fact, the truth that everything happens in accordance with God's will. Everything else that we think is happening in accordance with our will or the will of that person or this person is simply an illusion. It's not the reality. The reality is that everything is happening in accordance with God's will. This is why we believe that God is doing everything. So, if you wake up in the morning to do your Fajr prayer, you feel like you've made the decision, you've set the alarm, if you have to set an alarm to wake up, and you've woken up, you feel like you are the one who did it. But it is actually God's will that made it happen. And this is the reason why we believe that God is doing everything. Because if it does not coincide with His will, you will not be able to wake up. So this is the primary reason. That's why in one verse God says, it is not you who threw, it was we who threw. So for us to even do something, it has to be in alignment with God's will. And we see countless verses that speak about God's will. Surah 9, verse 28, God says, O you who believe the idol worshippers are polluted, they shall not be permitted to approach the sacred masjid after this year. If you fear loss of income, God will shower you with His provisions in accordance with His will. God is omniscient, most wise. So here you can see why we must believe in the divine will and how powerful it is. Because God says very clearly that if you fear the loss of income, so the circumstances are not in your favor, right? So that will naturally create a fear of loss. God assures the believers, saying that He will shower the believers with His provisions in accordance with His will. So nothing is above His will, even if the circumstances look very bleak and doesn't look favorable. God says, I will provide for you in accordance with my will. So this is why we have to constantly be aware of it, that God is doing everything. So if we come across a situation like COVID where everything is shutting down, people are in distress, we understand this is in accordance with God's will, and we should not fear for our provisions, for our safety or anything like that. Because if God wills it, that you be harmed, regardless of what is happening around you, you will be harmed. Right? And if He wills that you are not touched by any sort of adversity, regardless of what happens around you, or what situation you are in, you will not be harmed. So this is the reason why we must believe God is doing everything. And this is why we must submit to it completely, and to the divine's will, to God's will. In Surah 10, verse 3, God says, Your only Lord is God, the one who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, then assumed all authority. He controls all matters. So He controls all matters. Everything. What food you will eat, how you will eat it, the proportion of the food that you will eat, what time you will wake up, what time you will sleep, what kind of income you will get, how many kids you will have, when you will get married, whether you will get married or not, whether you will stay married or not. Everything is controlled by God. Every aspect of whatever happens in this universe is controlled by God. And this is why we must submit to His will, and we must stay connected with Him as well. All matters are controlled by Him. There is no intercessor except in accordance with His will, such as God, your Lord. You shall worship Him who do not take heed. So this is also the reason why intercession is not possible, because it must be in accordance with His will. Nobody can override His will. Even the things that we do, right? We decide certain things. We say, tomorrow I will do this, or today I will do this, or today I will have this meeting with this person, or today I will do all these other things. These things are not in your control. You think there is an illusion that makes you feel like you are in control of these things and you are the one doing these things. But it's only because it aligns. If you've achieved or managed to do something, you have to remember it's only because God willed it. You can't exert your will against His will. You cannot do anything against His will. So only if God wills, whatever you plan to do will happen. And this is why we say inshallah, right? Because we know it has to be according to His will. We can't predict these things. So we'll say, okay, I'll do this, or we'll talk about this later, inshallah. Inshallah. That's the important, and it shows submission. It's such a powerful thing. People use it very casually nowadays, inshallah and all these things. But it is such a powerful words to say, because we are acknowledging that regardless of what I decide, God is the ultimate decider of things. He is the ultimate doer of things. Everything in the universe happens in accordance with His will. Everything. Even the rain coming. Now we have clouds in the sky. It looks a bit like it's going to rain. This is also in accordance with God's will, because an hour ago, when I left home, it didn't ever seem to me that it's probably going to rain, right? But then within an hour, it just changed completely. That's in accordance with God's will. So if I decide to do something, let's say I decide to go for a picnic today, and then suddenly this happens, and then I'll have to change my decision, right? So as you can see, God is in control. So regardless of what I decide and I wanted to do, it didn't happen. This is the same thing with what happens in the universe. In Surah 13, verse 13, God says, "The thunder praises His glory, and so do the angels out of reverence for Him. He sends the lightning bolts which strike in accordance with His will. Yet they argue about God, though His power is awesome." See, people argue about things. People think they are in control, that whatever they think they can do. They will teach people, if you decide to do it, you can make it happen. No, it doesn't work like that. No, you can make it happen. You have the power within you. You can make it happen. You see, it's all a myth. That's not the reality. You can be the most smartest, brightest person, but regardless of that, if it's not in accordance with God's will, it's never going to happen. That's not the language or how a submitter thinks. A submitter is, and at the back of his or her mind, a submitter is always aware that it only happens if God so wills. You see, people may even make judgments about you, saying that, looks like you're not going to ever make it in life. Or they'll probably tell someone else also, this person doesn't look like it's going to ever make it. And then one day, surprise, surprise, things turn completely differently. Why? Because that's God's will. God is the one who decides. And if God wills it, nobody can stop it. So inshallah we'll continue in the next khutbah. Alhamdulillah, shukran, la ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah. Praise be to God, I bear witness that there is no God but God, and He has no partners. Now, why knowing this is so important for us? Why knowing that everything is happening in accordance with God's will? Why is it so important for a submitter to know this or believe in this? It's important because the way you look at life will completely change. The way you look at even the tiniest, smallest of things will change, because you will cease to be an objector and you will become a submitter. And your happiness is very much tied with this attitude of least or no resistance to God's will. Because what creates suffering, what creates distress, is that we are resisting something that God is willing to happen. We are resisting it. We don't like it, so that makes us angry. We fight it. We want to change it somehow. We want to take control of things. I want it to be this way. I want it to be that way. I want my wife to be this way. I want her to do these things for me. I want my husband to be like this. I don't like the way she does this. Or I want my boss to be like this. Or I want my colleagues to be like this. We want to control everything, right? So that we feel good. We want to make things work our way. But that's not how it is. A submitter understands that everything. If your wife is angry with you, perhaps that's God's will. There's something that you need to look into, right? Perhaps it's for her. Perhaps she needs to look into something. Perhaps you are overreacting to something. So everything is happening in accordance with God's will. Everything, and so we don't object to it. We submit to it. Perhaps, if we find ourselves always regularly stuck in a bad traffic, we have a tendency to curse everyone, get angry with all the people around us and say bad words, and we do that. I mean, I'm guilty as well. But then I start to realize, why do I always find myself in this situation? So it's a call for reflection, You start to understand that you're objecting to something, that's why it's causing more and more anger, frustration. You might even get into an accident because of that, because of the objection. So you understand this is happening in accordance to God's will. If God wills it, there will be no traffic when you drive. There won't be other accidents that should slow you down. So you must take a deep breath and submit to God's will. I know it's easier said than done, but that's what a submitter must do. We must remind ourselves, I'm objecting, I need to submit to God's will. It will give you peace. It will make you a peaceful, good, pleasant person. Because if you are irritated with something that's going on, that irritation will naturally go onto other aspects of your life. The way you deal with your wife, the kids, you get irritated. It has happened to me a lot. Dealing with some individual can irritate you. That can cause, you misbehaving with other people in your life. Or the way you look at things. So, very important for us to transform really from deep within. We must live this truth. God is doing everything, we must live it. So it will transform us. We must focus on being a submitter rather than being an objector. So if you look at guidance, we want to guide everyone. We want to I want to make this guy a submitter. I want to make this lady a submitter. I want to make all my relatives, I want them to be submitter. This is what we like and we want, and maybe we don't say it, but that's our desire, and we try to make things. And when we don't get the response that we want, we are fed up, we are frustrated, we condemn them, they're all going to hell. We don't think that's God's will. Then once we accept that this is God's will, God guides whomever He wills. So you think by coming up with very convincing points, being very eloquent, talking to people, and bringing up great points, somehow this person is going to just become a submitter magically. Doesn't happen at all. Unless God wills it, it will not happen, right? So what change would that bring to us? We'll stop trying too hard, right? Because we understand that my job is simply, and this is what even the messengers were told, that your job is to simply deliver. You're not obligated to convince them and make submitters out of them, right? Similarly for us, when people come to us, we discuss, we tell them the truth, but we are not in the business of convincing anyone. So this is there we have to, submit to the divine will, God's will. We should understand that God is doing everything. If He's misunderstanding you, she's misunderstanding you, and not becoming a submitter, that's what God wills. And we can't make someone a submitter against God's will. Now, in terms of provisions also, when God speaks about provisions, He says that everything is given according to His will. Provisions also come this way. So in that area of our life, we spoke about guidance, how we cannot guide our own, the loved ones and friends and family. Similarly in provisions also, we want things to work in this particular way. We want this year, next year, this certain amount of provisions. We want this. I want to get married by 25. I want to have 3 kids by this thing. There's no harm in desiring these things, but you have to understand, you must understand that it happens in accordance with God's will. So we say inshallah, and we leave it to God. We don't object if it doesn't work that way. So a submitter can of course make plans, can do things, but at the back of his or her mind, we must be aware that everything happens in accordance with God's will. And His will is better than our will. We think we know everything, so we try to exercise our will all the time. And in most cases, our will leads to disaster, whereas God's will is much better. So that's why. And if you look at many of your bad decisions, things that didn't work out the way, you would understand it's because you didn't submit to God's will. You wanted it now. So you took charge of it. No, it's not happening, but I'm going to make it happen. So I'm going to do this and do that, and then you end up with something that will make you regret that completely. And then you start to realize, I should have been a bit more patient. I should have been a bit more patient. Perhaps it was not the right time. That's why it didn't work out. But I didn't realize it. I wanted it according to my timeline. So I started to force my will onto it. Even though it was clear that it was not the right time. So I wanted to exercise my will. In some cases, God will allow you to do it, and so that you can learn that submitting to His will is the best way. Okay? We have to always understand that we must remain subservient to Him, not try to take charge and say that I will do what I want. This is egoism. Submitter's attitude is, while he or she attempts to do things in life, plans things, take action and everything, they are fully aware that it will only come to fruition, that and nothing can be achieved without it being in alignment with God's will. So this is what God is doing everything simply means. We submit to that, we joyfully accept it. So, and when we do that in every area of our life, not one area, every area of our life, our relationships, the way we think about our provisions, you may feel like you're not getting sufficient. You may be extremely happy at some point, maybe not so happy at some point. This is all in accordance. That's why God says He increases and reduces the provisions of people in accordance with His will. And trust me, that's the best thing. Allow Him to control things. Don't try to force your will on things. If it's not happening for you right now, there must be something great coming your way. So we must always have that positive mindset, because we trust God. So may God guide us and help us in becoming submitters in all areas of our life. and submit you to his will. Akim Salam.